is business cycling, and under business cycling, we are taking on the following subtopics: government policy, which is business cycling, the amplitude as well as moving averages. I believe the topic has been covered in our different schools and the province, and this lesson comes as a revision lesson. Please join me. Let's see what we have in the content. So the following are the lesson objectives or lesson outcomes for the lesson. So this lesson will assist you or help you to understand how fiscal policy and monetary policy are used to smooth the business cycle in both expansionary and contractionary. We will also understand the use of amplitude to forecast the economy. How are amplitude used to forecast the economy? And also, how can moving averages be used to forecast the economy? It is believed that you already know the following content based on the given topics and the business cycle. The composition and the features of the business cycle are well known, have been taught, we believe. Business cycles explanations are well known. The government policy that comes today as a revision topic. The new economic paradigm has been covered, as well as features underpinning forecasting. It comes back today as a revision topic, but in there we are only taking amplitude as well as moving averages. These are the basic concepts that will assist you to understand this lesson or to understand the content during the course of the lesson. The monetary policy. This is known as a policy by the central bank, which is administered by the Monetary Policy Committee, MPC, to influence the money supply and ensure price stability within the economy. Economic boom. The successive period of business cycle characterized by peak and prosperity. Remember, that's when economy is doing very well. We call this an overheating economy in this position. The depression. The long-term decline in economic activities, which is more severe than recession. The peak, which is the turning point. The highest turning point of business cycle, which indicates the end of expansion period and the beginning of contraction period. Trough. This is the bottom turning point of the business cycle, which indicates the end of contraction period and the beginning of expansion period. Terminology continues. The contraction period. The period that illustrates the decline in economic indexes characterized by recession and depression, which is known as downswing. Expansion period. The period of business cycle that illustrates an increase in economic activities characterized by recovery and prosperity, which is upswing. Repurchase rate or repo rate. This is the interest rate charged by the central bank to commercial banks on their borrowings. We continue with terminology. Cash reserves or reserve requirement ratio. The ratio in a form of commercial banks' revenues that they are obliged to keep in the central bank. Moral suasion or moral persuasion or credit control. The manner at which commercial banks should behave when creating credit, which is informed by the current economic conditions. Open market transaction. This refers to the sale and the purchase of bonds, financial securities between central bank and commercial banks. So this is the structure of our lesson. We have our monetary policy instruments, namely repurchase rate or repo rate, cash reserves or reserve requirement ratio, open market transaction, as well as moral suasion or moral persuasion. And then we have fiscal policy instruments. That goes with government spending as well as taxation. Then we will discuss moving averages, also discuss the amplitudes. So the following are the bigger ideas of this lesson, which is smoothing the business cycle. Bigger ideas, in this case, we talk about those questions that will provoke a learner to simply understand slowly but surely the lesson. It gives steps to the understanding of the lesson. So the following are the questions that may be asked that will lead to you as a learner to simply understand this lesson. Firstly, if we say we are smoothing business cycle, it is very important for you as a learner to know what is meant by smoothing business cycle. Because if we simply come to you as teachers and tell you smoothing business cycle, at times you don't even understand what is that. So it's very important for you to understand or to be informed about the meaning of smoothing the business cycle. Question number 2, or bigger idea number 2. Who is responsible for smoothing business cycle? You need to know who is fully responsible. Who is in charge? Which institution, which department of the government is responsible for smoothing the business cycle? That is the second level information that you must know before you attend the content itself. The third bigger idea, why is it necessary to smooth the business cycle? Then now, I know at times we teach you the content and we don't give you a reason why the content is taught. It is very important for you as a learner to get interest. For you to be interested on a particular topic, you need to know the reason. Remember, we are preparing you to be economists of the future. So, it is very important for you to know why is it necessary or important for the country to smooth the business cycle. And then bigger idea number 4, what are the relevant economic policies when smoothing the business cycle? So if you get these questions answered, automatically you know smoothing the business cycle. If you can look at bigger idea number 4, that's when now we start doing what? We start going straight into the content and discussing those relevant policies and indicating how they can be used effectively in order to smooth the business cycle, either from prosperity or from trough or depression. Number 5, how can those economic policies be used to smooth the business cycle? We are applying now. So number 5 is the application. We need to take them into action. You need to be given a situation of the economy. If the economy is positioned down there at trough or at the economic slump, you must know how can those given policies be used to smooth the business cycle. Then you will be covering everything in that case. Hence, it is very important for us to break our lesson objectives and ideas like this so that you can develop until you get to the bottom of the lesson, from lower order to the higher order. If you can check, first one is the middle order. What is meant? Who is responsible is the lower order. Why is necessary is the middle order. What is are relevant policies? That one goes to lower order. And then how can those be used? It goes to make the higher order question. So the bigger idea number 1, what is meant by smoothing business cycle? So smoothing business cycle means an intervention by authorities or the government to influence the current economic performance. We know that at times the economy will go up to prosperity, which is too good, but then it goes with inflation and high level of imports because there is more money chasing few goods. So one must intervene to smooth the business cycle so that inflation can be reduced. Same thing applies if the economy is facing economic slump down there in trough or depression. There should be intervention to correct that long, maybe what you call long downswing or amplitude, so long downward amplitude, so that there can be economic recovery. So we call that smoothing the business cycle. The economy performs in a manner that needs consistent monitoring. One needs to take care of the economy. Economy cannot simply run without having an eye on it so that some errors or some trends can be corrected. So it needs a consistent monitoring to avoid inconsistencies that might result to overheating economy and underperforming economy. So we need also to correct that so that economy cannot overheat, because if it's overheating, it's doing too good with higher inflation. If it's underperforming, that means there is a very lower production in the economy. So economic indexes are declining. So basically, this basically means the use of economic policies which are capable enough to quickly turn economic performance in favor of current economic needs, social needs, and political needs. Remember, as we are dealing with the economy, we look at different needs. And then central bank, so of the country, represented by the Monetary Policy Committee, use monetary policy to influence the money supply and changes in price level in the economy. So it is very important to ensure that money supply in the economy is well monitored and also inflation rate is kept within the target range. Bigger idea number 3, why is it necessary to smooth the business cycle? If economic trends are not well monitored, economy might overheat. So to avoid overheating economy, it is very important for the government to intervene and ensure that it monitors economy and smooth the economy so that it can always be in line with economic needs, social needs, and political needs of the country. And then economic stability and growth is the measure or is a major objective for the nation. So it is very important to know that each country wants to have economic growth. Each country wants to have economic stability. So monitoring business cycle or smoothing business cycle help for the country to achieve that economic growth and ensure that economy is well stable. It is therefore important for the government to intervene and influence economic trends in order to create economy that shows reasonable trends and creates opportunities for all. So smoothing the business cycle allows the economy to move in a manner that create opportunities for all economic stakeholders. Because at times, economy will move to the point that it only supports some individuals. So economy should be all inclusive so that everyone's needs can be catered for within the economy. Overheating economy has an inflation effect and high importation tendency, while economic slump is characterized by the stage of pessimism. We know that if economy is overheating, there is inflation that will boom up. There's also a high level of importation. So smoothing the business cycle is very important so that can be controlled. At the same time, economic slump is bad because it shows the poor economic performance, where investors will be pessimistic on investing in the country's economy. Therefore, it is very important for the government to intervene at all times and manage the economy. Bigger idea number 4. What are the relevant policies that are used to smooth the business cycle? So government policy is going together with monetary policy, which goes with its instruments. Remember, monetary policy is controlled by the South African Reserve Bank in South Africa or the central bank. The fiscal policy, and then controlled by the government. So we will check into monetary policy, how can it be used, and then also fiscal policy, how can it be used expansionary and contractionary in order to manage or smooth the business cycle. So the monetary policy. So remember, to smooth the business cycle, money use expansionary economy to its slump. Then you can see what should be done, because this is the first scenario. For us to smoothen the business cycle, we need to show the positioning of the economic performance so that we can smooth the business cycle together with you for better understanding. It's our vertical axis, index of economic activities. Horizontal, that is time or period taken by each cycle to be a complete cycle. We have our trend line, which is the line that indicates the direction of economic performance or where the economy is heading. And then we also have, those are our waves of the business cycle, the upswings and downswings. We have peak on the boom, position or phase, recession, which indicate the decline in economic activities for at least 2 consecutive quarters. Depression, which is the long-term decline in economic activities.
I want you to ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what do I want? Do I want to become an A student, or do I want to become an average student? Number 2, I want you to ask yourself, how do you plan on getting there? Are you going to put more extra hours, or are you going to just sleep? Number 3, who will be with you in this journey? Because it is important that we associate ourselves with students who have the same vision as us, who want to become a student, who want to put in the extra work, who want to become better at what they do. Unsuccessful people do not plan. They just let life happen to them. But successful people are planning on how they want their lives to be. And right now, you plan on how you want your results at the end of the year to be like. Believe in yourself. Believe a little more in yourself. Because to those that believe, nothing is impossible. You have done this before. You have passed your tests before. You have went into a higher grade before. It is possible because you have done it before. Do not doubt yourself. Keep believing in yourself. Keep pushing, because this can be done and you can be great.
right, economic slump. Remember, if we talk about the economic slump, we talk about the economy that is facing the long contraction period, the economy that is doing very much poor, or the economy that is underperforming. So, if we talk about economic slump, we talk about the economy that is positioned down there in the business sector, maybe towards trough or at trough. It's not doing well at all. So, it will be indicated using the business cycle. We will position something that will notice that it's economic slump. Then you can see how do we smooth and at which position do we smooth the business cycle. So that's our horizontal, the time or a period. That a trend line will show the direction of the economic activities. Those are our ways of the business cycle. That is peak, which is the highest turning point of the business cycle. Our recession, which show the decline of economic activities for at least 2 consecutive quarters. Depression, which is the long-term decline in economic activities, that is more severe than recession. And then we have trough, which is the lowest turning point of the business cycle. Remember, trough is the end of contraction period and the beginning of expansion period. And then we have recovery, which is known as economic rebound. So there you go. Then we have economic slump. Economy is doing very, very bad down there. There should be a possible intervention to smoothen the business cycle. Remember, at this position, there's a lower level of productivity within the economy. There are less investors in our economy. Investors are pessimistic about investing in our economy because they believe there will be no gains. There's lower level of employment and a high level of unemployment. So one should intervene. So the government and the central bank can intervene to smooth the business so that it can be able to recover. Let's see what should be done. So in this case, we apply the expansionary monetary policy. Remember, expansionary monetary policy is the policy used by Reserve Bank to improve economic performance. In this case, there will be decrease in repurchase rate, decrease in cash reserve requirement. The government or the Reserve Bank can do what? Can also buy bonds from commercial banks or financial securities. And then also, moral persuasion can be relaxed to allow more credit creation within the economy. So the main question for the content to come is as follows. How can South African Reserve Bank use monetary policies to stimulate the underperforming economy? So this question will be answered in the content below. Economy is underperforming. We need to intervene by ensuring that we recover economy. We improve the economic performance. Basically, we know expansionary monetary policy can be used. Reserve Bank can intervene by decreasing repurchase rate. If ever repo rate is being reduced by the central bank, automatically it will inform commercial banks to do what? To decrease their interest rate, namely it can be the prime rate as well as nominal interest rate. They will also decrease. So in that case, the credit will be more affordable within the economy. It will be more cheap for people and businesses to take loans from commercial banks. As a result, there will be more money supply in the economy. If there is more money supply, we know that money demand declines. And then if people are having money, or if economic stakeholders are having money, they are always tempted to spend. That will lead to more aggregate demand within the economy. As aggregate demand increases in the economy, that motivates suppliers or producers to produce more and supply more goods and services. We know that the increase in the supply of goods and services inform the increase in gross value added per industry and also increase in real GDP. If ever GDP has been increased, there will be economic growth. Economy will be able to turn up from contraction period to the expansion period or to upswing and approach recovery where possible and also approach prosperity if ever is doing successively well. And then with the cash reserves, the central bank can intervene by reducing reserve requirement ratio. That means commercial banks will no longer be forced to reserve more of their revenues, but they will reserve less. Maybe it can be reduced from 2.5% to 1%. And then that will allow commercial banks to remain with more liquid money. They will be able to create more credit because we know their primary objective is to create credit so that they can be able to get more returns. So more money will be available in the system. Then commercial banks will give more loans in the economy, and that will lead to more money supply. If people are having access to more money, automatically, like I've said before, they are always tempted to spend. They can't sleep, they want to spend more. As they spend more, that motivates producers to produce even further. As production increases, that allow the GDP or GVA to increase or gross value added, which will increase also real GDP as well as economic growth. Economy will turn. It will upturn from contraction period to the expansion period. And then open market transaction. Remember, this is all about buying or selling of bonds. So in this case, the central bank or reserve bank can intervene by doing what? By by buying bonds from commercial banks. As they buy bonds from commercial banks, what happens? They give money away into the circulation from the custody. If they give this money away into the circulation, commercial banks will be happy because they will be having more money to give it out as loans. In that case, what happens? If more money is available for loans in the circulation, that will lead to more demand on goods and services because we go with aggregate demand. Aggregate demand will increase. If it increases, what happens in the economy? Automatically, firms will be motivated to produce and supply more because consumers are demanding more. As a result, what happens? Economy will be able to recover because gross value added will increase and then real GDP will increase, economic growth will increase. Economy will be able to turn up from contraction period to the expansion period. What about moral suasion or moral persuasion? Remember, the central bank or reserve bank will always instruct commercial banks to behave in a manner that is suitable for the current economic conditions. So if the economy is facing economic slump or down the trough, the reserve bank will instruct commercial banks to relax moral persuasion. So reserve bank will tell commercial banks to be very much lenient when creating credit. So remember, if there is more credit creation in the economy, people will be happy because they are always tempted to spend. Consumers will spend money they don't even have if there's more credit available. Remember what is the impact of that? As much as consumers are spending on credit, that will push producers to produce more because there's a greater demand on goods and services. As a result, what happens? The economy can be able to recover because more spending has a greater impact on what? On the increase in production by businesses. As the production increases, the supply increases at the same time, then that leads to what? That leads to gross value added increasing in the economy. As a result, real GDP will increase and economic growth will increase. So that is how expansionary monetary policy can be used to recover the economy that has been facing slump or long downward amplitude or contraction period. Then let's see on the content. The expansionary monetary policy. This is the policy that occurs when the Reserve Bank relaxes monetary policy by applying it in a manner that increases money supply in the economy. So for us to expand, there must be more money supply. You can't expand the economy if if there's less money supply. There must be more money supply available. We know basic instruments used by Reserve Bank to increase money supply, like I've mentioned them before. So the direct and indirect interaction between central bank as well as commercial banks make Reserve Bank decisions to easily influence money supply. If ever Reserve Bank inform commercial banks to behave in a certain manner, automatically that will always have an influence on the money supply. If the economy is doing bad, we need to expand. Reserve Bank will try to ensure that on its own interest rates are reduced, cash reserve is reduced, then money supply is given back into the economy through buying bonds from commercial banks. Also, credit is well created so that people will be able to spend on goods and services. So the Reserve Bank decrease the repurchase rate, decrease cash reserves, buy bonds from commercial banks, and relax moral persuasion or the moral pressure so that money supply can be increased in the economy. Repurchase rate or repo rate or lending rate. So remember, repo rate is the interest rate charged by the Reserve Bank to commercial banks whenever they borrow money. We know that commercial banks get money from the central bank. They can borrow money in there. So the payable interest rate is known as repurchase rate or repo rate or lending rate. As a lender of the last resort, the central bank assists commercial banks if they need money to further their financial objectives through lending. And then the interest rate charged to those loans taken by commercial banks from Reserve Bank is known as repurchase rate or the repo rate. So we'll be discussing on how it can be applied, how it can be used to influence economy to recover. The change in repurchase rate is the influence money supply in the economy because borrowers quickly react to the change in interest rate. If ever interest rate is decreasing, they borrow more. If it's increasing, they borrow less. So it continues. So in this case, central bank can decrease repurchase rate if economy is underperforming. The effect of that will be credit becoming more cheap. So the effect of lowered repurchase rate is the increase in money supply in the economy since loans become more cheap and accessible. So loans will be cheap and accessible in the economy if ever the repurchase rate has been reduced. The decrease in repurchase rate makes credit more affordable to borrowers because lower lending rate influence prime rate to be lowered, and also the nominal interest rate will also be lowered. So remember, the nominal interest rate is interest rate that changes with inflation. So if ever repurchase rate is lowered, nominal interest rate will also be influenced by that because it will change. And then if ever loans are cheap, they encourage borrowers to borrow more money from financial sector, and then that will increase spending because if people are having more access to loans, they spend more on goods and services. And that's what we want because we want the economy to recover. So there must be more economic activities and spending. This has an effect of increasing the aggregate demand in the economy and result to increase in the aggregate supply if businesses have enough capacity to produce. Remember, if ever the demand is increasing, the supply should also increase. So the increase in demand while also businesses are having enough resources to produce, and then that will lead to economy growing further because if demand is meeting the supply, that means economy will flow easily without some effects of inflation. Since the level of production increases, what happens? Real GDP will increase, and then what happens if ever real GDP is increasing? Real GDP is used to measure economic growth, remember. So economic growth will also increase because it is measured by what we call measured by the real GDP. So the increase in money supply therefore increase aggregate demand, production, real GDP, and economic growth. So let's see. Repo rate is decreasing. I will use arrows. If it decreases, the credit availability will increase because people will be willing to take more loans from commercial financial sector, And then as a result, what happens? The money supply will increase in the economy. If there's more money, people are always willing to spend. So what happens? The aggregate demand will increase in the economy. As a result of that, that will push the production to increase in the economy because if consumers are demanding more goods and services, that pushes producers to produce more, then the productivity will increase. If it increases, the gross value added within the economy will increase. As a result, real GDP will increase. And then that will lead to the increase in economic growth. Economic growth will increase informed by the decrease in what we call a repurchase rate. So this is the expansionary use of what? Of the repurchase rate within the economy. And then the economy then upturn from trough and approach expansion period. Remember, if we expand the economy, the main aim is to turn up the economy or to approach the upswing or expansion period of the business cycle. The second instruments. Okay, then now we are checking how has been the trends of what we call the repurchase rate in South Africa. Let's check from 2014 up to 2022 right now. We have seen the interest rate have increased. Like in January, it did increase. If you can check, in 2016, let's check 2016. Our interest rate was up there around 7%. But check 2017, there is the interest rate. It was at the highest, which is 7%. And then you go down up to 2020, interest rate was 6.5% there. And then you go straight to 2022. Interest rate started at 3.5 and then it's now at 4%. Those are the trends of the interest rate. And then this is the assessment. The assessment for a repurchase rate. There you go. The image comes back. You can see it's the same image that we have used. The question there in number 1, which is the lower order, which institution is used or responsible for repurchase rate control in South Africa? Identify a year at which repo rate was at its highest. Briefly describe the concept nominal interest rate. How does the Sunspot theory concur with changes in interest rates? And then how can the South African Reserve Bank use the repurchase rate or repo rate to stimulate the underperforming economy? That is 4 marks. So these are the possible answers. On which institution is South African Reserve Bank? Identify a year which repo rate was at its highest. In that case, it's 2017. And then briefly describe the concept nominal interest rate. Nominal interest rate is the interest rate that has not been adjusted for inflation. It is having inflation effect. We continue. How does Sunspot theory concur with changes in the interest rate? Changes in interest rate has a huge impact on money supply. Lowered interest rate increase money supply and aggregate demand, which might result to inflation if the market has a supply constraints. Remember the Sunspot theory under the business cycle that says one tried to make something better by making something worse off. So you try to make use of solar radiation, but you are causing most of negative externalities. In this case, it talks to state intervention, where they said under monetarist, the state intervention through expanding economy which is facing slump or downswing will lead to further employment opportunities, more income and more spending that might lead to inflation in the economy. So that's how it concurs. Because if ever we simply affect the interest rate, it will simply lead to more money supply in the economy. With more money supply in the economy, there will be more spending in the economy. If ever the economy is facing supply constraints, the demand might be more than the supply, then there will be inflation. How can South African Reserve Bank use a repurchase rate to stimulate underperforming economy? The central bank can decrease repo rate to increase money supply in the economy. With more money supply, people are always tempted to spend, therefore borrowings will increase to finance spending and result to higher aggregate demand. And then the increase in demand increases production and real GDP as well as economic growth. That's how a Reserve Bank can intervene using repurchase rate to stimulate the underperforming economy. The cash reserves or reserve requirement ratio. So this is the portion of reservable liabilities that commercial banks must hold on to, rather than lending out or invest, which is a requirement determined by the country's central bank. Remember, the Reserve Bank instructs commercial banks to reserve a certain amount of money on their revenues so that they can be taken care of in case they're facing liquidity. So that amount of money or that ratio is known as what we call the cash reserves. It is the monetary policy tool used by the central bank to manage liquid cash and money supply within the economy. South African Reserve Bank has 2.5% of what we call the cash reserve. It's been there over the past 2 years, consistent even over the past years. Decreased cash reserve increase lending tendency in the banking sector and increase money supply. If ever cash reserves can be reduced, what happens? The commercial banks will have more money to give it out as credit. So cash reserves requirement to stimulate the underperforming economy, South African Reserve Bank decrease the reserve requirement ratio. If the economy is facing slump, there should be a decreased reserve requirement ratio so that commercial banks will be having more money available to create credit or to give it out as loans. As a result, that will lead to more money supply in the economy. This expansionary action by the central bank can increase liquid money within the banking sector. There will be more money available within the banking sector, and they will start ensuring that they give it more into the society as loans so that they can be able to make returns. Commercial banks' primary obligation, remember, is to sell money into the economy through loans in order to earn more in a form of interest. Having more money increases the lending tendency in the banking sector. If they have more money available with them, they will give it out as loans, and then people will be borrowing money from commercial banks, or clients will be taking money from commercial banks, and that will lead to more money supply, and the economy will be influenced positively, because if we are holding on money, we do spend. So aggregate demand concur with the money supply by increasing, resulting to high production, high GDP, and high economic growth. If ever what we call the cash reserves has been decreased, I will call it reserve requirement ratio. It's been reduced to stimulate the underperforming economy. What will happen? There will be more money supply. Money will be available in the banking sector. As a result, what will happen? Loans will be given out. So credit will be available. And then, in that case, what will happen? The aggregate demand will increase in the economy. We know that if this factor increases, it pushes production to increase even further, it pushes the supply of goods and services, and also pushes the gross value added, also increase real GDP as well as economic growth. Then economy can be able to turn up and increase because of that effect. So these are the cash reserves trend in South Africa. So for 2021, it has been 2.5% for the past years. We can check 2020 up to 2021, then it's still 2.5%. That is the cash reserves that commercial banks are reserving or are forced to reserve or to keep, not to give it out as loans in order to manage the availability of money within the economy so that they can be able to be secured in case they are facing liquidity themselves. Open market transaction. Remember, we're talking about selling or buying bonds here. Economy is doing very, very bad. It's on economic slump or trough. There is a long downward, what we call amplitude or contraction period. What happens? Open market transaction. Remember, the South African Reserve Bank interact with what we call commercial banks. They do these transactions together of buying and selling financial securities or bonds. So, the Reserve Bank can intervene by doing what? By buying bonds. They will buy. They are not going to sell. They will buy bonds from commercial banks. If that is happening, remember, if the money is kept in the Reserve Bank, that money is not available in circulation. But once money is given back into the circulation, that money is away from the custody, is taken away from the custody, is no longer reserved. The money is within the circulation. So what happens? You know the behavior of commercial banks. If they have money, they want to create credit. They want to give people loans so that they can earn more on those loans. So as Reserve Bank buy bonds from commercial banks, what will happen? Commercial banks will be having on more money. So that means the money supply in the economy will increase. If money supply in the economy increases, what happens? You know the story. People will demand more, or consumers will demand more on goods and services. Aggregate demand will be increasing because of the increased money supply. As a result, we know the story again. What happens? The production will increase within the economy. As the production increases, that means the supply, aggregate supply, is increasing. With that happening as a whole, what happens into the economy? And then gross value added will be increasing, and then real GDP will be increasing, and then economic growth will be increasing. That happens because the Reserve Bank have intervened with the open market transaction by simply doing what? By buying bonds from commercial banks. If they buy, they give money into the circulation. That makes commercial banks to be very happy because they can create more credit since they have more money available with them. So during bad economic conditions, the central bank buy bonds from commercial banks. So it does buy bonds from commercial banks in order to do what? In order to increase money supply. So the effect of that has been explained. This increased money supply in circulation, since commercial banks are mainly responsible to make money provisions within the economy. Remember, Reserve Bank will make money available for commercial banks, and commercial banks will make money available for their clients and for the economy itself. Buying bonds from commercial banks releases money back into circulation, which increases economic activity and results to economic recovery. If ever the central bank buy bonds, it gives money back into the circulation, and then allow banks to be happy and give more credit into the society. And as that happening, there will be more demand on goods and services. The moral pressure or moral suasion. Remember, commercial banks are always taking instructions from the central bank. The central bank will assess economic conditions and instruct commercial banks to behave in a manner that is very much acceptable for the current economic conditions. So if the economy is doing very bad, is underperforming, facing slump or trough, what happens? The central bank can instruct commercial banks to do what? To relax the moral pressure, to relax moral persuasion, to ensure that there is more credit creation within the economy. So let's see. If ever the economy or the credit creation is relaxed, so we ease the moral pressure. What happens in the economy in this case? The credit creation will be more. If there is more credit available, People are always happy to spend. Consumers are always happy to spend the money they don't even have. So the aggregate demand will be increasing in the economy. As a result, what happens? That will push suppliers to produce even more because then production will be increasing. As a result, the gross value added will be increasing. That will lead to what? That will lead to a real GDP increasing. And then economic growth will increase. Economy can recover just because of relaxing moral persuasion or moral suasion. So let's see the effect here. Then the credit control is one of effective monetary policy tools in the economy, ensuring that the credit is well managed based on economic conditions. So the central bank is responsible to instruct commercial banks to behave in a manner that is acceptable for the current economic conditions, like I mentioned before. And then during the bad economic conditions, central bank instruct commercial banks to relax or ease moral pressure and create more credit in the economy. And then the effect of that is that people are always tempted to spend if given credit. They spend the money they don't even have. As a result, that will increase economic variables and economy will expand and will reach economic expansion and recover where possible. And then we have expanded. Now, how about contractionary monetary policy? We will contract if the economy is doing very, very good. Economy is facing prosperity, is doing very well. Remember, like I said before, you're asking yourself, why are we contracting? Because economy is good when it's expanding. It's accompanied by what? By the inflation effect and the higher tendency of imports because people are having more money to spend. They can spend from imports because local firm or local market cannot maybe afford to supply what is demanded by the local consumers. Then they import goods and services, which is bad for the economy because imports are the leakages, remember. So contractionary monetary policy is is possible when the central bank increase repurchase rate, increase interest rate, and then also does what? Selling financial securities or bonds into the open market and also tightening or being restrictive on credit creation or moral pressure. So the central bank applies the restrictive policy if economic variables such as inflation are at their highest level as a result of excess demand. Remember, inflation will always prevail if ever there's excess demand. Excess demand occurs when there is a higher demand on goods and services while suppliers can supply less. So suppliers are facing supply constraints while consumers are having more money, they spend more on goods and services, and then the demand will be more higher and supply fail to respond. Inflation, okay. So there must be contractionary monetary policy in there. Restrictive policies decrease money supply and result to economic downturn from expansion to the contraction period. So this is the overheating economy structure. If the economy is overheating, this is what happens. Our horizontal axis with the time or period, trend line indicated. That is the business cycle, upswings and downswings. That is our peak. Recession, depression, trough, recovery. There you see economies overheating at peak or economic boom. So that is the problem. Economy is too good in there. Variables are increasing rapidly. There is too much money available to chase few goods in the economy. And there's a danger of inflation. There's a danger of what? There's a danger of more importation of goods and services. Then there must be intervention by the government or by the central bank. So overheating economy results to more money supply or more money chasing few goods in the economy. And then this has an inflation effect in the economy because the demand is too much and the supply does not respond to the change in demand. And then local consumers then tend to import goods and services from the global market if local market cannot supply those demanded goods and services locally. And that will affect the balance of payment negatively. Central bank intervention is then required to dampen an overheating economy in prevention of further balance of payment and purchasing power parity degradation. Remember, if ever inflation increases, the buying power parity of money will decline, which is known as the purchasing power parity. And then also the balance of payment might also decline because there will be more deficit if ever imports keep on increasing while our local consumers are demanding. Then while exports are not increasing rapidly because of supply constraints in South African economy. So central bank can increase repurchase rate. So the effect of this, if ever repurchase rate increases, the credit become more expensive, as indicated, and then the money supply will decrease in the economy. That will decrease aggregate demand, and then the production will decrease because there is lower demand on goods and services. Gross value added will be decreasing, and then real GDP will decrease, and then what will happen? Economic growth will also decrease. Then economy will downturn from a peak and face down and approach the contraction period. That is the effect of applying a constructional or restrictionary monetary policy by increasing the repurchase rate. Increase cash reserve requirements. So this will decrease money supply and result to the decrease in proportionally and non-proportional economic variables. What will happen then? If ever the cash reserves is increasing, that will lead to commercial banks to remain with less money within the banking system, because now the cash reserve has been increased. So more money is reserved than money being kept, given in for circulation. So that will decrease the credit creation in the economy, and then that will decrease money supply. And then it is bad because it will simply lead to what? It will simply lead to less demand on goods and services. And we know the story. If the demand is lower, most of the economic variables will be affected negatively. So selling bonds, the central bank will not now buy bonds, it will sell bonds to commercial banks. As bonds are sold to commercial banks, what will happen? Money will be collected back from circulation back into the custody, which is the Reserve Bank. That money is no longer available for circulation. Then as a result, that will lead to what? It will lead to less money supply available in the economy and less spending. Also, tightening moral persuasion or moral suasion, being very much restrictive on creating credit, will result to less aggregate demand in the economy. That is our constructionary monetary policy. And then the fiscal policy. Remember, this is the policy by the government administered by the Treasurer or Finance Department or Minister of Finance to ensure that it controls what we call the aggregate demand and the economy. Fiscal policy is the use of government spending and taxation to influence the demand in the economy. We know that they are demand-sided. It is a powerful economic tool to iron minor upswing and downswing to prevent expansion from ending with high inflation. And then it is also a useful on shortening contraction or amplitude to prevent economic slump. So if ever there is a further expansion, government can intervene by using what we call a fiscal policy. A further contraction and fiscal policy can also be used. So the government can simultaneously increase government spending and decrease taxation to cause a double effect on an attempt to accelerate economy. In order to increase economic performance, both of these instruments can be affected or can be used expansionary. So these are the fiscal policy instruments, the government spending and the taxation. Remember, they are both used expansionary and contractionary. Expansionary fiscal policy, increasing the government spending. What will be the effect of that? Increasing government spending has a stimulus effect on economic variables. Look, the government spending is increasing. Let's look at the effect. If ever government increases spending, remember, the government will be injecting more money on what? Will be injecting money on improving infrastructure or investing more on the infrastructure of the country. Also, increasing wages and salaries for public servants, and also increasing social transfers and social services within the economy. And that will have a certain effect. With government spending increasing, what will happen? This might lead to more job creation in the economy if there is more infrastructure being developed. So employment might increase, and then automatically there will be more money flow, or availability of money will be increasing. So availability of money will be increasing. There will be more money available in the economy. As a result, we know if there is more money, the aggregate demand will increase in the economy, followed by what? Followed by, it will influence some economic variables, such as production. Firms or business will be pushed to produce more goods and services. And then the result of that will be the gross value added will be increasing. And then what is going to happen then? The real GDP will increase, and then economic growth will increase. That is because of increasing government spending. so that there will be economic growth. So economic variables are always affected by the change in government spending. If ever increasing, they will increase some of them because they are in proportion. So the government increased its spending on infrastructure investments, social transfers and services, as well as increasing the spending on wages and salaries for public servants. That will have a positive effect in the economy. The increase in government spending stimulates aggregate demand, production, real GDP, and economic growth. We continue with the expansionary fiscal policy. Decrease in taxation. Remember, the tax can be decreased. If we talk about taxation, we talk about both direct and indirect tax. If the direct tax decreases, we are referring to, in this case, the corporate tax as well as the personal income tax. Let's say the personal income tax increases, which is payee. So it decreases. What will happen? The disposable income will increase in the economy. If disposable income increases in the economy, what is going to happen? Aggregate demand by the household will increase. And then if ever demand increases, what will happen? Firms are pushed to produce more goods and services so that market can supply more. And then as a result, the same effect will occur because gross value added will increase. And then if the GVA increases, real GDP will increase, and then economic growth will increase. Let's say we decrease the company tax. The corporate tax is decreasing. As a result, what will happen? Firms will remain with more money available to further their investment. They will be able to boost their investment within the economy and produce more goods and services. So this might lead to job creation. This might lead to further investment. So I will say investment might increase further if ever firms are remaining with more money after decreasing the company tax. As a result, what will happen in the economy? This might lead to employment opportunities because firms, as they invest in buying machines, they will also have to employ more workers. As a result of that, what will happen? There will be more money available because wages and salaries will be paid to be employees here. So the money supply or the money flow will be more. It will increase. As a result, what will happen? Aggregate demand will increase, and then further components will follow. If demand increases, production will increase. If production increases, it is pushing the market to supply even more goods and services. As a result, what will happen? The gross value added will be increasing in the economy, following the increase in what you call the real GDP as well as economic growth. So this is the effect. If ever then we affect the indirect tax, let's see what is going to happen. Remember, indirect tax, in that case, we are talking about the likes of a value-added tax, which is very much obvious. Let's see what happens. If a VAT or value-added tax decreases, what will happen? The real income is going to increase. So before we go to the real income, the selling price of goods will decrease. Goods will be more affordable. And then real income will increase. Remember, real income refers to the quantity of goods affordable with the available income. So real income will be increasing in the economy. This will lead to what? This will lead to firms, in this case, producing more goods and services because the spending is increasing in the economy due to the affordability. So the production will increase. As the production increases, the gross value added increases in the economy, followed by the increase in real GDP and increase in economic growth. So this is the effect of affecting what we call the indirect tax. Basically, we are choosing what we call the value-added tax. So let's see the effect on the presentation. Lower taxes are the great incentive in the economy. We know that if taxes are reduced, that will be the greater incentive into the economy because that means money is within the circulation now. Remember, taxation is a leakage. Once you increase tax, you take money away from the circulation. But if you decrease tax, you allow money to flow in the economy, which will lead to more aggregate spending and more economic activities. The government can decrease taxation to stimulate the underperforming economy. And then the decrease in indirect tax, decrease selling price, and increase real income, like I've said before. And then decreasing direct taxes such as personal income tax increases the disposable income for the household and increase the spending on goods and services. So decreasing corporate tax creates an opportunity for businesses to expand their investment, which creates more employment opportunities and the level of spending in the economy. Remember, if ever the company tax has been reduced, firms will have more money available for them to further their investment, which can lead to more job creation in the economy. If there's more job creation, money will be available in the economy because there will be employment. Then people will be paid wages and salaries. As a result, that will lead to the economy expanding because there will be more demand if there's more money available. So decreasing company tax have a greater impact on both producers and consumers, including the economy as a whole. So what about if the economy is doing very well? We need to contract using the fiscal policy. So we do what? We decrease government spending. Let's see what is the effect. So the government spending is being reduced. If you reduce government spending, what happens? We are reducing economic activities in this case. Look, government spending is being reduced, and then some projects that were there in the economy will no longer be there, will be reduced, meaning some people will lose jobs in that case, because if you reduce investment on the infrastructure, some people that have been employed in some projects will be without job on an immediate effect. So employment opportunities will be declining in that case. And then what is going to happen then? The unemployment will be increasing. Is there any money flow increasing? No. The money flow is decreasing in the economy because opportunities are being reduced. As a result, the aggregate demand on goods and services is declining. We know that if demand, and keep it in your mind, if ever the aggregate demand declines in the economy, that will hit the economy very hard because it goes along the decrease in production by firms, it goes along with the decrease in gross value added per industry, it goes further to the decrease in real GDP, and goes further to the decrease in economic growth. So, if the demand is affected negatively, you need to know that economy will face bad conditions. And then also, let's talk about taxation again. You increase taxation. If the taxation is increased, let's say we talk about personal income tax is increasing, what will happen? Disposable income will be reduced in the economy. So that will mean the household will be having less money available to spend. Most of the income go to the government as a tax revenue. Then, as a result, what will happen? If we don't have money, we spend less. So aggregate demand will be decreasing. There will be less demand on goods and services in the economy. If the demand is declining in the economy, what is going to happen? The production will be affected negatively. It will decline because now people are having less money, they are demanding less. Firms are pushed not to produce more because there might be a wastage. And then the market will supply less. And then what is going to happen then? The GVA, gross value added, will decline, and then real GDP will decline in the economy. And then what will happen? Economic growth will decline further in the economy. Affected by what? By the increase in taxation. So remember, higher taxation is always a disincentive in the economy. The taxation is a leakage. Keep that in your mind. If ever you have an effect of tax in the economy, that means economy will decline. So if taxation is being increased, either a direct tax or indirect tax being increased, that will be the great disincentive in the economy. For instance, look, the personal income tax will be a disincentive to work because if ever people are facing higher taxation or higher pay as you earn, that lead to what? That lead to them, some of them quitting their jobs. And then higher value added tax becomes a disincentive to produce and to consume because consumers find it very expensive to consume because selling price will be increased. And then also the producers find it very difficult to produce because if ever selling price is higher due to the taxation, that discourages consumers to demand. So there is no need to produce more goods and services. And then you talk about the company tax. If the company tax is being increased, firms will be demotivated to do what? To invest further in the economy because most of their income or revenues go straight to the government and as government revenues. And then also if ever import tariffs are very, very high, it's a disincentive for local investors to invest because most of capital goods are imported from the global market. So if they are imported on the higher import tariffs, that make it difficult or make it very expensive for them to import the capital goods. So as a result, capital formation of the country will decline. There will be less importation of machines and equipment. So keep it in mind that taxation is a leakage. It will always affect the economy negatively. Then let's see what is there. The government can dampen an overheating economy by lowering government spending. So if ever government spending is lowered, this has an effect of decreasing employment opportunities, disposable income, and the aggregate demand, like I've mentioned before. Increasing taxation, I've just mentioned that higher taxes are disincentive in the economy. Increase indirect taxes, increase selling price in the economy and reduce the real income. And then higher direct taxes reduce disposable income and investment opportunities for businesses. This has an effect of decreasing the aggregate demand in the economy. That is the effect of taxation. Once you impose more tax on household or businesses or on spending, our economy will be affected negatively. And then we have already smoothed the business cycle. We have used the expansionary monetary policy, expanding the underperforming economy. We have used contractionary monetary policy, dumping what we call the overheating economy. We have used the fiscal policy. We have used expansionary and also contractionary on the fiscal policy. Now we are moving to features underpinning forecasting. The first thing we are doing is amplitude before we attempt moving averages. The amplitude is one of those topics that at times we don't do much on it as we teach, or you don't do too much on it as you learn or as you study. There's a lot of information under amplitudes that should be displayed to you as a learner in order to stand for any kind of assessment. So the amplitude measures the descent from peak to trough and trough to peak along your business cycle. And then amplitude is characterized by the expansion period and the contraction period of the business cycle. So remember, we have the positive amplitude and the negative amplitude. It measures the intensity of the contraction and expansion period. How intense is the expansion period? Is it increasing further? How intense is the contraction period? Is it decreasing further? Remember, a long upward amplitude or upward amplitude, they are positive. They indicate the increase in economic trends or economic indexes. So we prefer the long upward amplitude because they indicate the strength of the economy. Even though they have, they are characterized by the inflation, but we prefer them because they indicate the strength of the economy. And then downward amplitude are not well preferred because they indicate the weakness of the economy. Remember, they indicate the decline in the economic performance, so we don't prefer them. And whereas if they are longer downward, that means economy can decrease even further until it reaches zero and reach negative. So we don't prefer those kinds of amplitudes within the economy. So it is measured on the vertical distance between the trend line and the turning points of the business cycle. So the upward amplitude, like I mentioned, there you go, we have our illustration of the business cycle. The main thing that we illustrate here is the upward amplitude. So that's a real GDP, that is peak. Amplitude is going up there. So our amplitude is indicated by expansion. You can see there's expansion. So this kind of the amplitude is preferred because it indicates the strength of the economy, because in this case it's zero and then economic variables are increasing. Might be zero here and then maybe 10 billion, 60 billion, 100 billion. So economic variables in this case are increasing along this amplitude. So it's an expansion period. It's good for the economy. There you go, indicate that arrow indicating the increase of economic variables, and the upward amplitude indicating upswing or expansion period. So what does it imply? Upward amplitude indicates the strength of the economy, like I've said before. It indicates that the economy is doing well or is increasing or is positive. Indexes of economic activities are positive. This reflects the growth of economic variables. They are growing from lower to higher. And then the growth of economic variables is characterized by recovery phase and prosperity. We know that. As for our expansion period, we have those two phases. And then the positive change in real GDP creates further upward amplitude. If ever there is a further increase in real GDP, what happens? Amplitude will go further without reaching what we call the turning point, which is peak. This ends at peak or prosperity when indexes of economic activities start to decline. Remember, the peak is the end of upswing and the beginning of downswing. So the following is the downward amplitude and its effect. Like I've said, it is not well preferred because it indicates the weaknesses or that economy is doing very, very poor or is declining. There is our upward, then it will be joined with the downward amplitude now. There is the downward amplitude. So our focus is now here on the downward amplitude. You can see that economic indexes are declining here. We had 0, 10 billion, 60 billion, and 100. But if you can check from here, from 100, we are going down, surely going down until we reach this 0. So this is the downward amplitude, which is not preferred in the economy because it indicates the weakness of the economy. It indicates the poor performance of the economy. There is the contraction period along the downward amplitude, and there is an arrow indicating the decline in economic variables. You can see this arrow here. It's indicating the decline in economic variables. They are declining. There you go. From higher to lower, indicated on the vertical axis, going together or parallel with what? With the contraction period or the downward amplitude. There you go, amplitude is going down, economic variables are also decreasing. So what is implied by the long downward amplitude? Downward amplitude indicates economic slump, which is the decline in economic activities. It is not preferred because variables are declining. It gives a sense of the decline in economic activities that has occurred. And then too long downward amplitude focus the intense of economic slump. If ever they are too long going down, there will be intense economic slump. They indicate that economy is declining drastically. Long downward amplitude, there you go. We have an example of long downward amplitude cited from one of our prelim question papers for previous years. You can see that the amplitude, there is a downswing there, and it's 0 here. So once the amplitude goes below 0, that means there is a further contraction period. There's a further decline in economic variables, to the point that we have -1 here in terms of economy. It's no longer growing. The amount of GDP is declining drastically. That means goods available are the imports in the country. We are no longer having goods that are produced locally. Down there it's -2, meaning it keeps on declining because we are no longer producing goods and services locally, but we are importing. Remember, imports are negative. So once you give more imports or you bring imports in the country while you have exhausted your local productive capacity, then there will be negative variables of economic growth trends. Then there we see economic declining. We are not producing enough goods as compared to the previous years. And then we come across this long downward amplitude, which is indicated on the image. It is not preferred because it indicates what we call the weakness of the economy, indicating that economy is poorly performing. So it is very important that the state intervene to iron out these fluctuations that are unnecessary within the economy. So implication, if the market cannot autocorrect and obtain economic slump, further contraction period will occur. If the government does not intervene by smoothing the business cycle, the contraction period will go further within this business cycle, and then long downward amplitude will be visible and will be seen. Government intervention has a power to turn the economy from contraction period to the expansion period. So the failure of the government to intervene results to further contraction period, which can even go below 0. That I have showed you on on the diagram that have been there on our previous slide. So the amplitude then illustrates the actual performance of the economy. If ever economy is doing very bad, amplitude will be going down. If economy is doing very good, amplitude will be going up. So upward amplitude, the strength of the economy. Downward amplitude, the weakness of the economy. So what is the effect of the long downward? Long downward amplitudes are not preferred in the economy because they indicate the poor economic performance. And then long upward amplitude are preferred because they indicate the strength of the economy. So you must know the difference. If they are long upward, they are preferred, they indicate the strength. However, you must know that they have an inflation effect if ever there are less goods available in the economy, and then the demand is too high. But the long downward are not preferred at all because they indicate the poor performance of the economic activities. The further decline in economic variable result to negative growth of the economy. We know that, we have seen that. So then the moving average, the last portion of our lesson. Also the well undermined topic that we don't treat the most. So let's see what is on the moving averages. So we know that moving averages is a tool which is used to analyze changes that occur in economic using the data series that is given over a period of time. It's also used by the government to iron out the minor fluctuations of the business cycle. So it is calculated to iron out minor fluctuations and reveal trends in the business cycle, that is moving average. So the data given can be used to calculate the moving average for the business cycle over the past 3 years. Remember, for us to calculate moving averages, we need information to be provided. We have two approaches or methods, the qualitative method and the quantitative method to calculate moving averages. So to get moving averages trends, using qualitative method means we are using information that has been researched. Means our information that we are using is more like judgmental. We can use our judgmental or our ideas to judge on what can happen in the economy. So it does not give pure information if we are using the qualitative, but quantitative method is good because it is mathematically used. There will be a data over the past years given, and then you can be able to use those trends of data to calculate moving averages. So that one is not judgmental, but the qualitative method is judgmental. It will be explained here. So moving averages is an analytical tool used to forecast the trend of economic performance. We call it the analytical tool, the data series, statistical information. And then it is the statistical data or data series used by economists, businesses and government authorities to predict the future economic performance. We can use our current trends of moving averages to see what can happen in the future. We can forecast the economy by using the current moving averages. So by using moving averages determined from the given data, economists get a clear picture or information of the general trends of the business cycle. It gives that clear picture to economists, the government authorities, and business people on the trends of the economic activities or economic performance over the past years. Then they can use that information to forecast, meaning to foresee and estimate and predict or extrapolate what might happen in the economy in the near future. So to calculate moving averages, qualitative method and quantitative method are used. Like I've mentioned before, we use both qualitative and quantitative methods. Quantitative method is based on mathematical, while quantitative method yield research, assumption, and probabilities. So in this case, under qualitative, it is mostly on assumptions. There is no much information provided. But under quantitative is mostly preferred because it deals with maths or mathematical methods. Whenever we are dealing with these moving averages, we can be able to calculate and measure economic trends. Then using predictions or assumptions, that one will not give us proper information. Probabilities are not always good. Qualitative method is also known as judgmental method because you use your own judgment in there. And then quantitative method is appropriate to use when previous data is not given, the qualitative method. You can use it if the previous data is not available and when long-term forecasting is done. So we prefer this if information is not well available over the previous years. By calculating the moving average, economies or businesses will be able to analyze the trends of economy over a period of time. It gives them that claims, give them that assurance to say they can be able to analyze what has happened and what is still to happen in a form of forecasting. Informed predictions are made when the data series has been used properly. So if ever given data has been used correctly, decisions and predictions can be used accurately. But if the data is not used accurately on the moving average, there will be wrong assumptions, obvious, because the data is not used accurately. So data series is added when evaluating trends of economic performance over a short or a long term. So moving average can be calculated over a period of 3 months up to 5 years when smoothing the minor fluctuations of the business cycle. Months or years, data series is added and divided by their total number to discover moving averages. We will see in practice how they can be calculated. Information from one of our final examination question papers. We are given this data, then learners had to calculate moving averages. So how do we calculate? Let's see. We have 2010, 2011, and 2012 divided by 3 because we are using the period of 3 years. So 2010 was 5, 2011 was 11, 2012 was 9. So you plus this and then you divide by 3. The moving average was 7.33. Same thing apply. Remember, you cancel the first year, which is 2010. You continue with 2011. 11, 12, 13. 8 plus 9 plus 11. You then divide by 3, you get your 9.33. And then that's your moving average. You go further, you cancel 2011, you go to 2012. And then in 2012, you will say 12, 13, 14. And then you add those variables, and then you get your 8. Because you add this amount, you divide by 3, you get 8. You go further, you cancel 12, you go to 13. 13, 14, 15. And then 11 plus 4 plus 6 equal to, and then you divide by 3, divided by 7, you get, divide by 3, you get your 7. And then you go further to 2014. You say 14, 15, 16, that is 2016, 14, 15, 16, then 4 plus 6 plus 10 is to 20. Then you divide by 3, you get what you call, so this is divided by 3, and then you get your 6,66. And then this can be used to plot out the business cycle. You can take this information and draw your very own business cycle to show that you clearly understand the use of moving averages. So basically, it will be those 3 years variables, like 5 plus 8 plus 9 was given there. You get the total amount, then the total, you divide it by 3 because you use 3 years. That was 2010, 2011, 2013, so it's 3 years. So the number of years or number of months you used, you will use it to divide to discover the number or the amount of moving averages. So it's 3 years used, divide by 3. If we happen to use 4 years, that will mean we'll divide by 4. If we use 2 years, we divide by 2. So just know that if we use 5 years, we divide by 5. So let's see the diagram that has been plotted with the given data or information after calculating our moving averages. There we go, the information is already available, our vertical, our horizontal. And then the index of economic activities, the time or period taken by the cycle to be the full cycle. And then the first one, which is our 2012, is 7.33. 2013, 9.33, our moving average. And then 2014, it's 8. 2015, it's 7. And 2016 is 6.66. Then you can plot your graph. There you go. There is your business cycle. So this one is known as the actual business cycle, not the typical business cycle. It's an actual business cycle because we have plotted the business cycle using the actual amount of moving averages. So it shows the trends of economic performance using moving averages. So here is the question. How can economists use moving averages in forecasting? They can use moving averages to do what? To predict what is still to happen in the economy. They can use moving averages in order to analyze what has already happened in the economy. And then, how can economists, government, and business people use amplitude to forecast the economy? Amplitudes are used to forecast the current economic performance. It shows how the economy is performing at the current stage. Because if the economy is declining, amplitude will be going down. They will be downward. If the economy is increasing, amplitude will be upward. So it is very important for you to be able to answer those questions, which is the mid to higher order. How can they be used to forecast the economy? Remember, these are features that are used in forecasting. They are used to forecast the economy. Then you can see these arrows indicate, the first one indicates 2012, second one 2013, and then the third one indicates 2014, fourth one 2015, and the last one indicates 2016. That means in 2016 we had the moving average of 7.33, 2013 we had 9.33, 2014 8, 15 7, and 16 it was 6.66. So our lesson ends here. Let me give you a brief summary. Remember, it is very important for you to understand the use of fiscal policy and monetary policy in smoothing the business cycle. ensure that you know that what we have seen most in Marking Center, if ever you are asked to maybe mention instruments of fiscal policy, some of learners mentioned the ones of the monetary policy. It's wrong. Avoid confusing. Know your fiscal policy. Know your monetary policy. It is very important. Know who is responsible for fiscal and who is responsible for the monetary. Know how can those policies can be used to stimulate the underperforming economy. Those are very critical questions for the business side. Also know how can those policies can be used to dampen an overheating economy. The very important part that confuses most of learners. Be careful. Expansion period is good. Peaks are good. Economic boom is good. Prosperity is good. However, it is having some effects within our economy, because if ever the economy is overheating at peak of prosperity, that means there is more money available in the economy. Then consumers are demanding more goods and services. Remember, firms or businesses might be facing supply constraints or supply challenges, meaning they cannot be able to supply the quantity of goods that we need as consumers. Therefore, what happens? Local consumers will go out of South African economy and import those goods and services that they need. If they do so, the level of imports in the country will increase. Remember, there's a balance of payment that is affected by that. Level of import will affect our trade balance in the current account and affect the balance on current account and lead to the deficit in the current account. So, if ever the level of imports is increasing, that is bad for the economy. Also, if there is more money chasing few goods in South African economy, the demand pull inflation will prevail. If the demand pull inflation prevail in the economy, what happens in there? Some people will be affected negatively. Economy will be affected negatively. Therefore, there must be intervention to cool or to dampen that overheating economy using both expansionary fiscal policy and expansionary monetary policy. You go down, the further contraction, if the economy is facing trouble or economic slump, that means economic activities are doing very, very poor. Production is lower, employment is lower. There's a lower money supply in the economy. Investors are withdrawing their investment and running away from South Africa, meaning they are pessimistic about investing in South African economy because they don't stand any return. So what should be done? The government should intervene according to the according to the Keynesian approach. Intervening by doing what? By applying expansionary policies. It can be expansionary monetary policy and the expansionary fiscal policy. I understand the view of monetaries that government must not intervene because that will result to what? Will result to further employment opportunities, further income, and further spending on goods and services, and it will lead to inflation, meaning try to correct something by causing a problem. However, in this case, intervention is not on the argument. There must be intervention by the state using both fiscal and monetary policy to obtain the economy from the contraction period to the expansion period. If that is done properly, economy can be able to recover and face expansion period. If it's going further higher, it can even face what we call the prosperity. So that is the power of using the fiscal policy and monetary policy very, very much clear in order to ensure that economy is expanding. If we use the fiscal policy and monetary policy without uncertainties, we can be able to achieve what is needed by the new economic paradigm. I thank you. I believe the lesson will have a greater impact on your preparations for any form of formal assessment and informal assessment. Enjoy your preparation. Bye-bye. I believe the lesson will have a greater impact on your preparation.